and take your seats. Great, thank you, thank you.
Well, welcome to our late afternoon session. I would like to introduce the head table to you. First, we have National Commodore Gus Romano. To his right, we have Vice Admiral Gautier, who's the Deputy Commandant for Operations. To his right, Deputy National Commodore Linda Merriman. To her right was supposed to be Rear Admiral Timmy, but we're missing him. Next is Dean Ako at Land West, Commodore Pat Ferry, and Admiral Arguin from the Assistant Commandant for Prevention Policy was also supposed to be here and is running late because I know he has other meetings. And then on the other side of the podium, we have Vice National Commodore Mary Kirkwood. And to her left, we have Rear Admiral Sibley. He's the Deputy Commander for the PAC area. And to his left, we have Rear Admiral Vann. Just trying to see there. Rear Admiral Vann, he's Coast Guard Cybercom. To his left, we have Deputy National Commodore PAC area Tiny Singler. To his left, Deputy National Commodore Lant East, Commodore Alan Fred, and then our Chief Director of the Auxiliary is joining us down here, Captain Glenn Dye. So thank all of you for being here today. It is now my sincere pleasure to introduce to you Vice Admiral Peter W. Gautier. Admiral Gautier assumed the duties of Coast Guard Deputy Commandant for Operations in June 2022. In this capacity, he is responsible for the development of operational strategy, policy, guidance, and resources that address national priorities. This oversight of Coast Guard missions, programs, and services includes intelligence, international affairs, cyber, the maritime transportation system, commercial regulations and inspections, search and rescue, maritime security, law enforcement, defense operations, environmental response, contingency planning, and the operational capabilities of cutter, boat, aviation, shore, and deployable specialized forces. You are. You're almost as busy as us.
Thank you for
May
that.
I go on?
Oh, more?
Well, I do.
Oh, please. Let's be merciful to the audience here. It's late.
Admiral Gautier, we look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And National Commodore Romano, senior leaders of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, what a joy it is for me to be here today. Far be it from me to start off on my conversation without letting you know, wishing you a happy opening day. For the baseball fans, the Cards and the Blue Jays are tied 5-5 right now at the bottom of the sixth. We barely escaped from Sector Upper Mississippi River with the traffic to be here today, but what a joy it is to be here. And so as I understand it, there are a number of new folks who are in new positions, at least, here in Auxiliary Senior Leadership, and what a joy it is to have an opportunity to meet you here from the podium, and then hopefully get to meet you a little bit more personally here tonight, and then as the months go on, as we work together to help serve the Coast Guard and serve the American people and serve the nation here in our important roles. You know, it is impossible, and I know you had Admiral Fagan here a few days ago, it is impossible to start any conversation with the Coast Guard Auxiliary without expressing from the active duty perspective our deep and abiding appreciation for what it is that the Coast Guard Auxiliary does for the United States Coast Guard, for our active duty reserve and our civilians. Really deep appreciation for me representing the organization, and also personally as an individual who joined the United States Coast Guard, because way back in 1983, I put in an application for the Coast Guard AIM program through Auxiliary Flotilla 1014 out of Oakland, New Jersey. 1983, through an auxiliarist named Dick Swanson, and the rest is history. So I would not be in this organization today if it weren't for the Coast Guard Auxiliary there in northern New Jersey, helping to shepherd me in to the experience. So thank you personally for everything that you've done for me. I wanted to introduce Master Chief Ann Logan, who is our Deputy Commandant for Operations Command Master Chief as well. Ann Logan is the Silver Ancient Trident. So in the Coast Guard, in these career paths that we have, the most senior enlisted member in the Marine safety community is called the Silver Ancient Trident. Master Chief Logan holds that honor, just as our Commandant has the Gold Ancient Trident honor as well. So Master Chief Logan and I took the opportunity when we were here traveling to St. Louis to visit Sector Upper Mississippi River yesterday, and then to go tour some of the Coast Guard cutters, the inland buoy tenders that are home ported here as well at the High River stage, which previously had been really, really low water. And one thing that stuck out to me was there are only 250 individuals assigned to that sector. That's active duty reserve and civilians. There are over 900 auxiliarists assigned throughout the 11-state area in the Sector Upper Mississippi River footprint, area of responsibility. And I think that is just a testament to the amazing volunteerism that we have here in the Upper Midwest and around the country. The sector commander, Captain Bender, told me he could not do his mission without the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary right here in St. Louis and in the 5-state or the 11-state area there. So that's a testament to here, and that's a testament to everywhere that you work. So we talked about being busy in the introduction. I know you don't have time to do this. You don't have time to do this. Everybody tells me how busy I am. You are very busy people as well. But yet you make time, especially at this peak pinnacle points in your Coast Guard Auxiliary career at the Commodore level. The fact that you make time to do this shows what heart you have in carrying out the spirit of volunteerism that's a thread through our culture in the United States of America, serving us, and how absolutely wonderful that is. So thank you for that. The Commandant, just reading what she had talked about, I think covered a little bit about the National Risk and Opportunities Conference that we held with your current National Commodore and then your previous National Commodore in attendance. That was an opportunity for the senior leaders to get together and just take stock of where we are in the United States Coast Guard in terms of our demands and how we can actually get together to figure out how we're going to meet these demands. National Risk and Opportunities Conference. And I could sum up where we are in terms of Coast Guard operations by saying that we are at a historic point in U.S. history where the value proposition of the United States Coast Guard has never been more recognized in our lifetimes. The White House, the National Security Council, all the way up to the President, the Congress, senior leaders in Congress and on all of our oversight committees, our partner agencies now recognize more than ever what the Coast Guard value is in terms of military, law enforcement, humanitarian service regulator, safety and security of our waterways and facilitating commerce. And that's what I work with every single day in the National Capital Region. Now that comes at a price, because with that recognition is the demand for more Coast Guard services in this country and around the globe. And that's a testament to what Admiral Sibley and Admiral Tianson are doing in the Pacific. When we are re-home porting the Harriet Lane from the Atlantic area over initially into Hawaii, because we received funding to create an Indo-Pacific support cutter so we could more aggressively engage Pacific Island nations. To counter Chinese narratives, yes, but really to help reinforce global governance and the international norms that our fathers and grandfathers and grandmothers fought so hard for in World War II. It's the Western Pacific cruises that the cutters are doing out there that we hadn't traditionally done. It's the smaller fast response cutters that are engaging island nations as we speak to help them enforce their fisheries laws within their exclusive economic zones. It's the Coast Guard cutter Spencer that is working in the Gulf of Guinea, doing a similar thing with African partners, reinforcing their governance over their exclusive economic zones to preserve their fisheries that are vital to what they do. It's the Polar Star returning back from Antarctica, doing a port call in Chile headed back home. It is the home porting of the 6th Fast Response Cutter in Patrol Forces Southwest Asia to help the U.S. 5th Fleet counter the smuggling that's happening from Iran into Yemen, to try to reinforce stability as we've really backed off on military presence there in the Middle East. It is Admiral Lunde and his cutters that are preventing a mass migration as we speak in the Florida Straits and then off of the north coast of Haiti as we are contending with historic levels of migrant flows from those two countries, from individuals who are desperate to make it to the shores of the United States of America. Flows that we haven't seen since a mass migration in 1994 from both countries, and the cutters that are amassed to do that. And then it's the counter drug, the search and rescue, the maritime transportation safety and security missions. It's boating safety, it's preserving lives of Americans as they operate on the water for pleasure and to make their livings. We are being called on to do more of that, so we are calling on the Coast Guard Auxiliary to do more of that for us. And in more non-traditional areas, we need your help. And I'll just recount a couple of great examples of where you're helping us and maybe where we need a little bit more of that in the future. You have helped us with something called the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center to help artificial intelligence and machine learning identify what boats look like. We've got to teach the machines when you talk about machine learning. The Coast Guard Auxiliary has helped us to do that with Maritime Target Identification System. And as part of our thanks to you, we've awarded the Coast Guard Meritorious Team Commendation to the individuals in the JAKE team who participated in that. As we speak, we're advancing how we're using UXSs. We have 4 unmanned vessels in that area of high flow in the Florida Straits with sensors on board helping us detect where these boats are coming from. Pacific Area and District 11 also have unmanned vessels that are operating on the maritime boundary line between Mexico and California. This dark target identification that you helped us with is being employed in these so we can be more effective, and we're going to need more help with folks who have expertise in artificial intelligence and machine learning in the future. Admiral Vann in a few minutes is going to talk about Coast Guard Cyber and the growth of Coast Guard Auxiliary and cyber forces. Tremendously exciting and cutting edge, and we know that there are auxiliarists who are experts in their civilian careers in cyber, and the ability for us to harness that and bring it to bear for our roles in defending our networks, in helping defend the maritime transportation system against cyber intrusion, and then operating in cyberspace against adversaries is going to be really tremendously powerful. Your auxiliary culinary assistants continue to serve us in Coast Guard dining facilities globally. This effort is exemplified by auxiliarist John Quinn, who recently completed a 60-day deployment aboard the Coast Guard cutter Kimball, which saw the transit from Honolulu, Hawaii, along the coast of Central America, and then up and disembarking in San Diego. Similar examples on Coast Guard cutter Polar Star and Douglas Stenman using aux chefs on board, because guess what? We are short culinary specialists active duty in the Coast Guard. We've got major gaps in that area, and you are helping us plug those gaps in our culinary specialties. Chaplain Mode is here. He's going to talk to you tomorrow. I don't want to steal any of Father Mode's thunder here, but we view chaplains as operational enablers in the Coast Guard. We cannot operate if our workforce isn't resilient. that the home front is taken care of, their emotional and religious needs are taken care of. And the fact that we are now at over 100 aux chaplains in the Coast Guard is just absolutely tremendous. Cannot really in words express how important this is to us, especially in areas that are more remote. And we have lots and lots of units in remote locations that don't ordinarily get chaplain services because it's just hard. And the fact that we have grown that service is just absolutely wonderful. Your auxiliary healthcare services have continued to make a direct and positive impact on the Coast Guard. Because guess what? We are mobilizing our healthcare specialists from around our clinics in order to be operational on the front with Operation Vigilant Sentry for this migration operation that we're in. We mobilize these folks to help CBP on the land border. This is leaving our clinics really unable to provide the level of services that we do on a day-to-day basis that we need for our active duty members to go out and do their operations. So the healthcare services that you're providing and doing things like EKG screenings for cadets at the Coast Guard Academy when they report in, medical waivers for Coast Guard recruiting commands so we can more quickly get folks signed up and recruited into the Coast Guard, cruises on Coast Guard Cutter Eagle, and other deployments is just absolutely critical to our operations. And then there's what you did for the southwest border, the land border, which is truly remarkable. Spirit of volunteerism in order to help us help DHS with that tremendously important and difficult role. 250 auxiliaries since May of 2022 have supported that effort, providing critical administrative and logistical support, delivering over 30,000 hours of support, mainly in Eagle Pass, Texas, one of the areas of the highest level of flow across the border last summer and last fall. And we keep asking and you keep helping us do that. And I am really, really thrilled to announce right here in the podium that for 140 auxiliarists that have helped us here, they're going to be receiving the Coast Guard Special Operations Ribbon for participating in that incredibly important effort by volunteering. Then there is boating safety, right? As we expand into these unique mission sets for the auxiliary, there's the fundamental stuff that we need to continue to step into. I am incredibly proud of what you all did through COVID to keep auxiliary functional, to keep auxiliarists moving forward strongly in that space. And as a result, you have reduced the number of boating fatalities year in, year out to do that. So those are really just a couple of examples that I wanted to give you. We need more. I know that the gap analysis is underway, and there's some preliminary results and more to follow, but we'll take what we can get from you, because as we grow, we need you to grow as well. So I think, should I introduce Admiral Vann or bring Admiral Vann up here to talk cyber?
If you'd like, not Mrs. Barth.
Oh, Mrs. Barth? I will not steal her thunder. She's really good at this. And then we'll be happy to have a conversation after this.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to introduce Rear Admiral John J. Vann. Admiral Vann assumed duties as Commander, Coast Guard Cyber Command, located in Washington, D.C. in May 2022. He is responsible for conducting full-spectrum cyberspace operations in support of Coast Guard Department of Homeland Security and Department of Defense mission objectives. Yes? Okay?
Cut it. Perfect.
Thank you.
So I'll start by giving you an update. It's the bottom of the 7th. It's now tied 6-6. I'm watching on my phone over here. I'm a Red Sox fan, and we lost to the Orioles today. So it's up from here this season. So hey, thanks everybody. Really appreciate being here. I'm here with some teammates, but I want to introduce CG Cyber's Command Master Chief Michael Brewer, who's here with me, who while not the ancient trident, is a trident. And we happened to be on a trip. You know, it's interesting. So we were on a trip this week where we were going to be coming to St. Louis, and I'm really glad to be here with all of you because this wasn't originally part of the plan. The centralized service desk, the Coast Guard centralized service desk, you may know, is here in St. Louis, and the service desk is now part of CG Cyber. So we come out frequently to visit. We coupled that up with some other things. We were over at Scott Air Force Base visiting the Defense Information Security Agency Global Operations Center yesterday. So they essentially run the .mil network for the whole entire world. And we learned they're one of about a dozen entities that, and this is, honestly, they said this, I think it's true, they kind of run the entire internet. They're one of a dozen of the nodes, and I'm going to forget the term now, but along with a couple other military entities, a university, a couple other public entities, and even a few private entities that make up the dozen folks that essentially sit on the board that governs the World Wide Web. So I learned something new yesterday. So that was pretty interesting. We also visited U.S. Transportation Command, which is over there at Scott Air Force Base. We're doing some missions in CG Cyber that are not only addressing Coast Guard missions that I'll talk about in a little bit in the Marine Transportation System, but are supporting U.S. Transportation Command. And so we got to visit with them. And earlier in the week, we were down in New Orleans and Gulfport to see some of our folks that were on a mission down there and to visit with the folks in D8. So really glad to add this on. I'm following my boss, and he's here watching me, and I'm sitting next to my old boss, who I'm sure will let me know how I do. But this really worked out really great, and you know, we appreciate being here with you today. So I have, interestingly, as a cutterman and a trainer by trade, I've had a number of interactions with the auxiliary that have been maybe in that more specialized or non-traditional, not your support to stations around the operational Coast Guard, but more folks with really valuable skills that have deployed aboard cutters. I've been the beneficiary of that many times as a cutterman. Early in my career, as I came out of graduate school and was running the Coast Guard's brand new e-learning program 22 years ago in Coast Guard headquarters, I was the beneficiary of a recently retired IBM executive who joined my team and knew a whole lot more than I did about what I was doing, not to mention how to navigate the Coast Guard headquarters politics and everything, and so really benefited from that. Again, I've had the opportunity to interact with some flotillas out there in the field as an operator. The auxiliary chef or the culinary support program, I was the CO at Training Center Yorktown, and we had a great, at the time, aux chef program locally, and I didn't have a cook, I didn't have any extra help around, but I told my wife we're going to entertain a lot, and auxiliary came to the rescue and was at the house a lot, and it was really great, added to how we were able to lead there. I didn't go to AIM, but my wife did. So I met her through this Coast Guard career of mine, and hers started in AIM. So to jump on the AIM shout out, thanks for that. And then finally, when we get back, I believe it's late next week, we're going to be hosting a group of students from the Virginia Military Institute who are in the Auxiliary University program. And right now, 3 of them are already selected for OCS. And they're interested in cyber, and they're coming to talk to us, and we're going to get an opportunity to speak with them at the end of next week. They're coming to Coast Guard headquarters. We're going to host a visit. So just have had the opportunity to interact in many, many different ways. And so what's the point here? Well, I'm really excited that now in my current capacity, I'm getting the opportunity to be a part of, I think, one of the most exciting growth opportunities here and ways that the Coast Guard is going to benefiting from the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and that's with the Auxiliary Cyber Program. And I'll tell you just a little bit about that. You may have heard some already. I don't know if I have a slide with me, but there it is. So I'm not going to cover everything on the slide, but it's there, and I'm sure you'll be able to get it from your files. But this new partnership, a few gentlemen whose names you may or may not know, but Mr. Joe Espino, Mr. Cliff Neve are a couple of your shipmates who have been putting this program together. And just in November, myself and Admiral Arguin, and I know the National Commodore has been right there alongside and kind of said to me, let me know what you need. I've told the Commandant, you're going to deliver, Jay, so you better deliver. So we're working together, but we signed out the Coast Guard's, the AUK Cyber Augmentation Program instruction back in November. And so what that does is it lays out for the entire auxiliary, if you are interested in contributing as an auxiliarist to the cyber missions that you heard Vice Admiral Gautier mention, this is kind of how you go about doing it. These are the qualifications you need. This is how the selection process will work. We will move into a period for some of those people where there will be obviously some clearance requirements and things. But basically it is anybody who's in the auxiliary or joins the auxiliary and kind of also wants to contribute to CG Cyber, this program lays that out. The next big step, and I'm not sure if this has been shared with everybody, but on April the 21st, we are going to establish the very first Coast Guard Auxiliary Cyber Flotilla. Yes, let's have a round of applause. So this will be a way for auxiliarists or potential auxiliarists who really want cyberspace operations to be their primary way that they contribute, or maybe the only way, a flotilla that they can affiliate with that isn't one of the kind of the traditional. It will be another flotilla. It will be based out of Fort Meade, Maryland, where the U.S. Cyber Command is. And be in that area, in the Fort Meade, National Capital Region, Baltimore area. There is a Joe Espino, as a matter of fact, the auxiliarist who's been kind of heading this up. He is an employee, was at the National Security Agency on Fort Meade, and now is at U.S. Cyber Command at Fort Meade in his day job. And so good connections there to those groups that we work with. But that flotilla will be established here in a couple weeks, and so there will be a way for individuals to contribute there, whether they're physically there or whether they're in cyberspace. We are actually doing that with our own workforce, with our reserve workforce, and now we'll have an auxiliary component that can come from anywhere. In fact, we have reservists in CG Cyber that are serving from foreign countries. And it's because obviously our work is done in a way that you don't necessarily have to be physically present to do it. So we're really excited about our partnership with the auxiliary. I'm going to talk real quickly, and then we'll have some time for Q&A about what it is we do in CG Cyber, so you maybe help understand how you and some of your shipmates with either the expertise or the interest in cyber are going to be able to contribute. But to boil it down, and Vice Admiral Gautier said it real quick, but we have 3 lines of effort in the Coast Guard cyber strategic outlook that are really our marching orders in CG Cyber. The first one you heard was, to defend our own networks, right? It's that cybersecurity function that protects Coast Guard networks and even Coast Guard auxiliary networks from potential intruders, from cyber criminals, from malicious cyber actors, and also just ensures that our systems operate the way they're supposed to. So that's kind of the first thing we do. That's our line of effort 1. That's that defend our own property, our own backyard, if you will. The second line of effort is to protect the marine transportation system. And you heard me mention that we have a team this week. In fact, we were there on Tuesday down in District 8 down in Gulfport, Mississippi. And this is where we send cyber protection teams out into the MTS. They work with the local sector. They partner with a port partner. In this place, they're working with a port authority. And they do a number of different types of missions that span from they assess the cyber security of a facility, or maybe we know there's been a cyber intrusion, and so they go and they work to hunt for, find, and eradicate the bad guys from the network, and then they also can go and just kind of look and collect and look for evidence of bad actors. And so that's what those teams do. We have had already auxiliarists who have deployed from in their local sector AOR to support our teams that have been deployed out in the field. And you're going to see more and more of that as part of this partnership that we're going to have going forward with CG Cyber. And then the last line of effort, you heard Vice Admiral Gautier mention operating in and through cyberspace to counter our adversaries. So this is where instead of launching a boat and putting a boarding team out there, or instead of launching an aircraft, we're going to be launching cyber warriors in cyberspace to deliver effects against the adversary. And we're doing that mostly through our partnership with U.S. Cyber Command at the moment. But these are kind of your most exquisite cyber experts, and there are some of them in the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and some that want a way to contribute. These are folks with very high-level clearances and very high-level skills, and to the point about the Coast Guard needing support, all three of our lines of effort, we can use more support. This is, as all of you know, this is a growing business line. The threats are multiplying faster than we can keep up with them, and cyber impacts in the marine transportation system or in critical infrastructure have the ability to really affect the supply chain or the economy of this country, can be very significant. So appreciate all the support, whether it's people who have lots of experience and a high-level clearance, all the way down to people who are just interested and are willing to put in the time to get through the training program we've laid out and get some qualifications to contribute. Really exciting time for the partnership between CG Cyber and the Coast Guard Auxiliary. So again, very much appreciate you having me here this evening, and I look forward to answering any questions and continuing the partnership. Thank you.
Okay, with that, do you think we can get a couple of handheld mics? God, perfect. So we're open to the floor with questions. Hey, I know it's been a long day. Mine started a little after 4, but come on.
What's the score of the Cardinals? 7-6 Cardinals. Top of the 8th.
Bueller? Bueller? Bueller?
I'll ask a question. What happened to the mic? I'll stand up. So this is for Admiral Gautier. The Commandant was here a couple of days ago, and we asked the question about, where do you see the auxiliary, the needs of the Coast Guard for the auxiliary in the future? So in your role, do you see anything special coming down the next couple of years that we should start training our members for? Do you have any insight into what's in the crystal ball in the next 3 to 5 years?
Thanks for being brave enough to ask a question at the tail end of a long week, Commodore Kirkwood. I do see us, so maybe philosophically, sort of moving into a future where we have fundamental roles, enduring roles for the auxiliary, and then more and more we're going to need auxiliarists based on their own expertise from their own careers to fill gaps. So it's why I'm so excited about this gap analysis that you're doing, because we talk about boating safety, we talk about communications, we talk about watch standing. Those are all fundamental things that we are absolutely going to need to continue. But more and more, we're going to need to have the precision to identify specific skills. I am thinking about Mandarin interpreters. I'm thinking about Creole interpreters. Cyber is probably the contemporary example of that. We need and will continue to need individuals who are experts in this new world of data and how we use data as an operational tool for decision makers, together with artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're going to need individuals who have expertise in unmanned systems, because we are aggressively moving into this world of small drones, also then medium and the larger drones as well. So there are folks out there that we need to get in, and who already are in, maybe with specialized flotillas, as we're seeing with cyber, in order to confront these emerging and enduring challenges.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Admiral Peter Jensen here. With which Pacific nations are we partnering with, and what are some of the measures we're taking jointly with them?
You know, it's amazing. Admiral Sibley just came back from Singapore not too long ago. And perhaps, actually, he's better qualified to answer this question, but everybody minus, okay? And you can imagine who the minus is. When our folks travel internationally, when we attend conferences and engagements that involve international partners, it is amazing the shift between the interest in the Coast Guard, vice the Navy, and other DoD services. I got to attend the International Sea Power Symposium. You can be seated. The last International Sea Power Symposium, which is an event where the Chief of Naval Operations invites all Navy chiefs from around the world to convene at Naval War College. And I have to tell you, so Admiral Schultz was the commandant at the time. We were incredibly popular. The Coast Guard just hosted a Pacific Island Nation Summit in the fall, where we invited each president and prime minister of the Pacific Island Nations to Coast Guard headquarters. And guess what? They came. Partners in Africa, partners in Scandinavia. Just had a sit down with the ambassador from Finland in the United States with the commandant last week. Before that, 2 days before, the chief of the fisheries for the government of Norway. So it is a very long list, and it's more Coast Guard is what they asked for.
Admiral Vann, you mentioned that some of the cyber augmentation work is going to require clearances, and we know that some of the work will require specific qualifications. Where we find people that have the right talent and experience, will the Coast Guard have any funding available to pay for those clearances or get those qualifications?
So I think the first part of the question, will the Coast Guard have resources to pay for, I think I heard clearances and training. And I think the initial answer per the new program instruction is at the moment, we're looking for people who already have some baseline level, particularly the clearances. Those are really expensive and elaborate to get those. And so I think we're looking for auxiliaries or potential auxiliaries who have those clearances already. As far as training, the answer is yes, we will pay for some of that. We already have subscriptions that we can share across the organization with people to increase their level of certification. And we'll work through those details, but in this first, I think it's about 100 people right now that we have on the list that are already joined or have given us an application, said, I want to join the program, here are my certifications. There are, as you might imagine, there are a lot of people in your ranks who have a lot of the certifications and experience that we're looking for. But there's also in the policy lays out what are some of the things we're looking for, the specific certifications, what training can you use to get it. That is stuff we we kind of already own. And if you wear a uniform like this or a uniform like that, we should be able to get you access to that training. Will we take that all the way to the most exquisite level? And I guess to your point, really the most expensive level and the highest level of clearance? I'm not sure we'll go there just yet, but we'll see, how the program matures. And by that, I mean, some of those individuals that are operating in that third line of effort, they're actively operating against adversaries in cyberspace. They literally take full-time years to get through training, 2-3 years to get to the point where they can kind of operate independently. And so I'm not sure we have to get ourselves trained up and get our teams staffed up and ready to go before we extend that. But I hope that gets at your question. And,
It does, thank you.
good, you bet.
Admiral Vann, don't sit down. This came from one of the YouTube viewers
All right.
watching this, and it's, are we in alpha or beta in cyber in the auxiliary?
Are you an alpha or a beta? You're an alpha. This is not a beta test. I think that's what the question is. Believe it or not, my background's not in cyber, so. So I think that's what the question means. No, this is not a beta. We're not trying this out. We have established policy already that talks about how auxiliarists participate in this program, and they already are. And I failed to get into it, but you heard me throw a few examples out there of auxiliarists that have supplemented our deployed teams. We've had groups of auxiliarists that have been supporting sector commanders who have a cyber expert now in every sector, a staff member. They're helping those folks and the inspections, the facilities inspection teams at the sectors to evaluate cybersecurity plans from port partners and facilities in the port. So this work is already happening. These are people in the auxiliary who have cybersecurity expertise. And then the flotilla is standing up on the 21st. There's nothing about that being a beta test. It's a real thing. So I guess what comes with my answer is need you to continue to recruit folks who have these skills and have this interest and think a little out of the box about how they can participate in a virtual flotilla, maybe from home, maybe from that computer at home, and how they still can really help the Coast Guard.
Don't sit down. When will the cyber requirements be available? Will there be a cross-reference for those that already hold cybersecurity certifications, such as those from ISC2 and GIAC, to the requirements?
So those last things you mentioned, those are some of the certifications that when you look in the policy, we list some of the certifications we're looking for, the types of people, the certs that they have, and those were a couple of them that were mentioned. The answer is the policy, I think, talks about some of what we're looking for, and then it also says you all are putting together some of your training guides. I don't know if that's the right term. And so those, I've already seen those. They're in draft, they exist. I'm not sure that they're signed out and released yet. Maybe someone here knows the answer better than I do, but I know that stuff is in the works. So again, the requirements are laid out in the policy that is already on the street with my signature on it. The training guides are being drafted. In fact, they're pretty far along, and then the certification. Again, the requirements are laid out there. My comment earlier about training, we have subscriptions that we could have you use a subscription to go on and go through training online that would help you work towards certifications like the one that you mentioned, the two that you mentioned.
And this will need to be the last question.
Roger that. I'll try not to make it too dangerous. Admirals, good evening. Thank you so much for coming and for being here. My name's Jacob Thayer. I've got a unique perspective because I'm on active duty as well. And one of the things that I was reading the other day in the Coast Guard Reserve strategy was a little disappointing. It talked about how the Coast Guard Reserve is the only augmentation force in the Coast Guard, or it might have said augmentation or surge force. And I thought, well, just given kind of Commodore Kirkwood's question, your response, and the diversity of involvement in the auxiliary, there's a lot of individual augmentation happening here and a lot of program augmentation happening here. So I was curious if there's been any thought given the breadth of auxiliary programs and activities, to maybe moving it over to the Coast Guard Reserve and out of prevention to focus on all of those different programs and the diversity of programs and really create a holistic Coast Guard surge force and I'll say synergy of what competencies are available to the whole of Coast Guard for surging and programmatic support. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks very much for that constructive thought. And so where do you work in headquarters? That's right. So they're the smart ones and they're the good writers. So you are absolutely right, and forgive the oversight for the folks in the room. I mean, we do look at the Coast Guard Reserve historically as they were formed right before World War II as being originally a fighting force that we could order, right? That we could give orders to involuntarily to mobilize them in time of conflict. And as we move and maneuver around our DoD services, which are predominantly always in the organized, train, equip phase to augment, to mobilize to crisis. We're just different in the Coast Guard. And whenever we have to provide bodies to the southern border or to op allies welcome to bring in Afghans, repatriate Afghans, every time we help another agency with pandemic operations, there's a job that goes unfilled. In fact, in Operation Vigilant Sentry, Admiral Lunde has mobilized 250 individuals from around Atlantic area on a month-by-month set of orders in order to bolster the operations that are going in and around the Southeast Maritime border. Those jobs are going unfilled where they're being pulled from. So I think we had just viewed the reservists in a different light in terms of the network of statutory authorities and benefits that come along with reserve mobilization. But your point is well taken in that the auxiliary is absolutely a similar force in that you come, you can backfill, you can augment, you can plug gaps in the Coast Guard active duty portfolio. Whether we want to move that on to Coast Guard, into Coast Guard Reserve, I think maybe there's some benefits to taking some of the models, as you state, on the reserve side and bringing that into auxiliary. It's just that the reservists, they have a whole different set of rules that go along with them in terms of titles, in terms of benefits, and so on. But I think what we can do is more MBSX to look at sort of those skill sets that can be chunked in terms of mobilizing forces, so to speak. Think that? No.
Thank you, Admirals. Mrs. Barth, are there any announcements?
The only thing I wanted to mention is I know that the admirals would love to socialize and answer further questions this evening. However, their dinner is being served at 7 p.m. and they have to go up and change. So they're going to have to depart pretty quickly.
Man the phone booths.
Yeah, yes. So, and thank you so much, both of you. And other than that, we'll see most of you at 0800 tomorrow for OPCOM.
Thank you for coming.
Greg Waugh. Nice to meet you.
And shake his hand too.
Sure.